I'm interested, like, how do you think you as musicians like consume music rather than just sort of normal people like me and Joel? Like, is there kind of some analyzing or different way that you interact with music, do you think?
Would you
Well,
like
so,
to answer, Lewis, or shall I?
go, you go, mate.
Right, so to break that down into two separate points, based on my background, I studied audio engineering at university, which is very much so the mix and master, analyzing of different frequencies and things like that, and critically listening to a mix or the way that a song sounds. I think general consumers, they don't really listen in the way that I would, in that I'll say, wow, that's been boosted at 440 hertz and it sounds really good. Whereas a general consumer would be like, oh, well, that sounds basic. Not to say that a general consumer has a negative way of consuming music, because I wish I could still consume music in that way. I can only really listen to it in a critical way now, which makes it quite difficult to actually find new music or listen to things. So yeah, there's two. I'd say it's two very different ways of consuming the media, but I wouldn't say that one is preferable or favorable to the other.
It's very different for me, I think. I just get emotionally tied to certain bits in music.
Mm.
I could replay the same song, no joke. If it's hit me in some sort of way, I try and not get too deep on like the mix. I might notice like parts of it, but I'm like, oh, how does that sound like good? But maybe not so much just general listening. I'll just find like emotional ties to the song, and then I'll keep replaying it,
Mm.
especially in situations where I've heard it before. Say I'm just sat at the park, could be just an average day. If I've like got a tie to that moment I'm there, then I'll probably play that song, and then yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. You kind of picked up like two sides of it, I guess. Like one of you said that you do think about it on a bit more sort of, I don't know, analytical level, or have a bit understanding of like where the from a technical perspective, how the song's been produced and what's leading to what's being heard. And then the other side of it is a deep emotional connection to music just generally. There's a deeper appreciation for the feeling behind the thing. So I like that you both came from a different perspective there. What were you going to say, Jake?
Yeah, I was thinking about contrast as well because it's like, okay, do I appreciate it more that there's all these beats? I know how many beats per minute are in this song. I know that I know what it takes to get there, to perform an Adele kind of vocal range, like that, how complex that is. And as an artist myself, maybe like maybe there's more admiration than people like me and you who maybe take it more for granted. But I think there might be a wider point as well, and like people that generally do something will will just understand it better. I feel like in our own professions, because we understand that we will appreciate it more than maybe the average person.
Defo. And I think, from your perspective as well, I assume it's probably similar when you come across someone that's wearing an independent fashion brand in public. You'll be having a look at it and you'll be like, oh, how's he got those textures? What textiles has he used? What is that embroidery or is it FTJ? You'd be picking up on little things like that in a similar way that we would on the other things, like, like Joel just mentioned, we've both come up with two separate answers to that question. But basically, the way that music is created, it's through what one of my lecturers called emotional architecture, which would be like the emotional side that Lewis was touching upon, and like, how these elements make you feel. And the other side of it is the technical execution of it and how you've got those ideas that have come from your head. You've done something that's very cathartic and you've actually just used your skills to turn it into something entirely new.
Hmm.
Mm.
I have a point that I just want to make based on something that you said, Sigs, in your answer to the question, which was that you sometimes wish you could hear music like somebody who doesn't produce music hears music without that kind of like in-depth understanding of what leads to the sounds that are being heard. And it goes back to something me and Jake talked about in an episode a couple of weeks ago about the relationship between knowledge and beauty. And one of the points that we made was when you try and understand the technical aspects of something and you I don't know, you develop, you know how exactly how the kind of steps from A to Z, how that thing is produced, it loses an element of its beauty and of the amazement when you listen to it or you come into contact with it. And so if I just put it in a ground it in a context that I would understand, right? And I can put this in a funny little analogy, but now when I watch a basketball game, or specifically wheelchair basketball that I play, I don't experience the game like my family do,
Yeah.
who watch it and are really deeply in the emotion of it because their son or their grandson is playing the game and they're gripped by whether the ball goes in the hole or which team's ahead or how much time is left on the clock. And it's like they're experiencing it on some kind of level because they don't really know what's led to that play happening. There's a mystery there that keeps it interesting in a deeper way. Whereas I look at it and I'll look at the how the play is run and exactly what's been written up and how each player's movement has led to whatever offensive look that they've got, right? And
Even like
it's
form and things like that too, isn't it? When someone's
yeah,
shooting,
exactly.
how's he shooting from outside the perimeter? How's
And
whatever.
something in that greater understanding, that knowledge takes away from the beauty. And I wonder if that was what you were alluding to in the point you made about music, in that when me and Jacob listen to a song and it strikes an emotional chord in us, or I think about this especially in like classical music, which really cuts me quite deep, is that I know that there's a level of mastery and understanding in the person that's composed that piece and is playing that piece that I have no idea how that's being done. There's a there's almost a level of magic in it that makes it so beautiful. So is that sort of on the lines of what you meant, that you wish you could listen to music like you didn't understand it?
Yeah, so that is sort of what I was alluding to. It's very well put the way that you described that, but it does somewhat take the beauty away from it. Simultaneously, though, you can look at things objectively and say if there's an up and coming band that don't have a massive budget, it's not the best production quality, it doesn't sonically sound amazing, but the substance of the actual track and the emotional architecture and the journey, they are there. I can enjoy that, but whether or not I'd go out of my way to consume that is different. Whereas I do think a general consumer would generally just consume. And I think it's a synonymous relationship between consumer and creator as well, because ultimately the consumer is the most important component within this entire thing. Because if there's no one consuming the audio, that means that there's no one to create the audio. Do you see what I mean?
It reminds me of this quote that's like, people will forget what you say to them, people will forget what you do, but they never forget how they make you feel. And it's that emotional world that we live in as consumers that's going to be kind of the strongest hitting point. Yeah.
And how do you think we do that? Like, I'll ask this to you, Lewis, because you were the one that sort of centered around emotions in your response. How do you try and create emotion in your music? Or is there anything like, is there any recurring themes or like structures of sound that make you really feel? Or is it something that you really struggle to understand and it just hits you and it kind of goes beyond rationality and it's something we can't really explain with words?
Uh, that's going into form of music. There is similarities I've noticed in a lot of tunes. They use, I don't know if you want to go to music jargon, but there's always like a semitone. It's hard to explain without. There's always some sort of like release on like a semitone sort of style. It's in all pop songs that kind of make you feel something. It's in a lot of tunes that make you feel something. But yeah, that's why I got stuck in a rut making music, because I was like, I'm always making the same three chords. And I thought, why am I doing that? And it's because those chords hit me in a certain way that I want. And then when I try something different, it just doesn't add up like to what I want or what I need from that feeling.
Hmm.
And yeah, there is similarities. You'd have to listen to it. You'd probably notice it if you were more like, you know, sat down and tried to like study it. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities. Yeah.
Is there any like examples that you can think of like two songs that are very like similar in how like they've structured it and they sort yeah, is there any examples that sort of come to mind?
Oh, there's too many. What was I looking at the other day? I think you might have seen on Instagram, but I was looking at Fred again's live stream. I was like, how's he making this sound so good, even though it's really simple? I was just kind of figuring out what he's doing. It's the same sort of thing. You know, a lot of his songs are kind of based around just two chords. That's pretty much it. But it's the whole world around it. I think we discussed this last time. That completely changes it, and the notes he's singing, the synths. But he uses a lot of that semitone behavior, the same as getting bicep. And yeah, it runs through electronic music quite a lot. That certain feeling. I think that's why people call it, euphoric or bittersweet, because it's kind of sad but yet elating. It's like push and pull.
Mm.
It runs through pop music as well. You can look at Taylor Swift; she uses it. All pop. Yeah, too much of it.
Yeah. I think that's true. And I also think the medium that the sound comes from affects the emotional like intensity of it. Like you mentioned synths there, and like a lot of the stuff that you do with your atmospherics would would hit so much like hits in that way because of the kind of dreamy nature of the I guess the texture of the noise being put out. I guess that's not a very technical term, but I also think of it like for me, I'm in a kind of classical kick at the moment, and the sound of a cello playing like a cover of a song that you know. So for example, there's a guy on Spotify, I can't remember his name, but he does like cello covers of famous songs, and he did a version of No Woman No Cry, the Bob Marley song, and he's done Hallelujah, but just on different cellos, and they all come together and harmonize, and it turns the thing that you think you knew and expresses it in a whole different way. And I think there's something in that. I don't know whether it's like I don't know, a frequency thing or just like the sound that emanates from that instrument, but um yeah, even if it's the same kind of pattern, like most songs are structured the same way, it's the way it's expressed, the sort of the technology that's used to create it all creates an emotional feeling in us, an emotional architecture, as Siggs would say. But yeah, I think that's the key, isn't it? That's the key to music, but creativity in general is how can you change that person's emotional state? Because if you can do that, then you've got that person, you've touched them in a way, and they'll come back for more and more and more.
Yeah.
I think a good example in the classical sense, I can't remember his name. You might know it. There's a song called Stone Start Spinning.
Right.
That includes cello. It's just two chords, but it's the way it's played.
Mm.
You'll have to check that out. That's heavily, I think, cello. So many variants of cello, I don't know.
We
Yeah.
mentioned like some of these songs are only like two or three chords, and that's kind of what makes them so impactful, and that's why people keep using the same ones. Is the chord part of it because like that's like the base of the song, that's where it starts. That's like the most kind of like the fundamental, and then you build up from there. Is that kind of why the chords are kind of like the main piece, maybe?
I don't know. Six. I'm
Yes.
thinking back. I'm thinking back to stuff like Take Five, two chords. It was the first jazz piece. This is getting into music college stuff now, but that's why I mentioned it. But it's just two chords. That was the most poppy jazz song at the time, but that made it accessible to people who wouldn't listen to actual stuff. Yeah, so, yeah.
I think even if you have a look at the chords being the foundation and stuff like that, going away from classical music here, but if we look at popular music over the last 30, 40 years, one massive example of this that I'd say is Oasis. So throughout majority of Oasis's back catalogue, they only use the same four chords, which is an E, an A D, and a G. They use C's as well, that's five really, but they iterate between those chords. And it's the same with people like Ed Sheeran, same with people like the Beatles. The foundation is built around these keys. I think because the keys that they use, there's certain frequencies within certain ones of the notes. I think that's what Lewis was alluding to earlier, in that they resonate with your brain. I don't know what it is. There's probably some sort of science behind it, but your brain picks that up and it gives you dopamine. I can't remember what the exact frequency is, but that's why you get a lot of common themes within popular music, because this has been tried and tested time and time again, but it's about putting a different spin on it and creating something new from those foundation things. It's like this is a bit of a weird analogy, but it's like playing Minecraft. You know, like when you play in Minecraft, you've got to go and collect wood at the start of the game, regardless, because you're going to build a crafting table. And then you're going to build everything else from that crafting table. I'd say that's what the chords serve as in music.
Mm.
Well, that's a weird analogy.
No, but it,
That's a good way to put it.
it's a great way of putting
Um, when it makes me think like I swear most of like pop music like is written maybe by I know that the stuff on the top charts might be written by like the same people, but they've kind of figured out how to what your brain responds to and what your brain finds as catchy and what frequencies it are like the most optimal thing to use. And I think there's like a optimal beats per minute of like this is what your brain reacts to and it keeps in its mind.
It's
Um,
127.
That's because it's our walking pace, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's something to do with either like resting heart rate or resting heart rate while walking. I
Oh,
don't know.
right.
It's one or the other. But yeah, it's 127 BPM.
so so our brain likes that. Why do we like 127 BPM?
Well, this is an entirely different argument, isn't it, Jacob, that I'd like to just push this onto now. You mentioned that a lot of the music that is written and produced and mixed and mastered by the same people, it's a supply chain like most businesses on this planet. The music industry is a multi-billion dollar industry. So you think of it in this way, do people actually find songs catchy? Or do people find songs catchy because they've been told that this song is catchy by media publications, by social media, by trending sounds on TikTok, by what's being played on the radio, by what social groups are listening to and things like that? Do we think we actually innately tune ourselves to music, or do you think it's more on the social learning theory side of things?
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
Both.
there's definitely a bit of both. You of course you're going to be like implicitly influenced by, when you're a kid and you're just in the car with your parents or whatever, and there's what's on the radio will just be there automatically. You don't really have control over that, and it will subconsciously affect you. And I guess it's interesting if I do a bit of personal reflection and go, the music that I listen to drastically changed across my like teenagehood as I got into adulthood, away from what everyone listens to. And the older I get, the more and more abstract and weird what I listen to gets, which is interesting, I guess. And maybe is that an example of me like kind of, I don't know, coming into adulthood and getting away from the constraints of the narratives I was imprinted on me as a kid for what my life should be about and what I should want and what I should like. Who the fuck knows? But I think there's definitely an element of it. And then one thing that I also thought about, from what you were saying about songs kind of being all the same is, do you think, I'm interested to hear both of your thoughts on this, or everyone's thoughts, you included, Jacob, but do you think that the kind of business side of music has killed a large part of creativity, because they have this like formula now that's like the most effective pop music that gets in charts and gets people's attention and makes money is this basic chord structure and is around this sort of tempo and has these sort of instruments and is based on these sort of topics when it comes to lyrics and it's this length of song, and it's like you kind of get a package of that's what a popular song is about, and you try and follow that because you want to be successful, because you want to make it as a musician, because you want to be able to do this, use your lifestyle and stuff, instead of just thinking about what's in you on a kind of soul level that desires to be manifested, or like the actual creative spirit that possesses you when you do the work you do. That gets blocked by this kind of audience capture for how you anticipate good music, or popular music, I guess, not the word good, popular music should be structured. Do I make sense there?
Yeah, okay.
Yes, yes. I think this goes again to another point. I think what we'd call popular music often has a correlation between themes that are being pushed by the media, generally speaking. So we'll start recently. We'll look at people like Sabrina Carpenter. We'll look at artists that may have overt sexualization within the lyrics, themes that are pushed often within the modern world. You look a couple of years ago, Lizzo was quite popular. That was at a time where body positivity and all these sort of things were being pushed very heavily in the rest of the world. Whether or not there are actually songs that exist just for the art and the sanctity of the art, yeah, of course there is. But I do think a lot of it is it's politicized and there's an agenda to a lot of it, why we consume the way that we consume, if
Yeah.
that
You
makes sense.
you can go Lewis first if you have any thoughts.
I did have a thought. Linking to the social media aspect of it. I mean, I have TikTok and I scroll through it, but all the music is the same. It's being pushed there. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but it's just at the minute I think it's that stutter house. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's just kind of just house music with that stutter gate in the background. Even though that's been going on for a while, like it's a certain type of stutter house. But then I sort of like purposely consume that because then it puts me off it. Because I know it's so main, it's so like, and for some reason, all the comments are like the same sort of person. They're like, "When's this released?" Or like the same comment. It's kind of like watching robots talk to each other. And I don't know if it is bots or not, to be honest. But yeah, it puts me off it. So I actually purposely look at it and get a little bit frustrated to make me. Then I realise the music I'm creating just gets like too weird.
But
But
is
yeah,
that too weird because someone's told you that that's too weird? Because
no, it
realistically,
genuinely sounds weird.
but how do we define what is weird though? That's what I'm trying to ask. Like, who said you can't create music like this because it's weird, but you can create songs like Ice Spice? You know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean. Yeah,
what if
I
an
do.
alien came to this planet, right? They had no prior knowledge of what humanity was, what we'd done. For some reason, they understood English and they could listen, right? Just hypothetically, they came to this planet and heard an Ice Spice record called Munch that's about, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
no, I
crazy.
do.
Who said that that isn't weird and the atmospheric music that you make is weird? That's my problem.
Hmm. Well, here's an interesting question, interesting hypothetical that's just popped into my mind that I'd like to ask you guys. Is let's say that did happen, right? Some extraterrestrial being came to Earth and was like, right, we've heard that you humans have got this thing called music. We want to hear what it is. And you had like one to like five songs from all like music that we currently have in our records as a human species. What do we play them? Because if
Oh,
we play
mate.
Sabrina Carpenter, to me that's shit, even though that is kind of what's like popular these days or whatever, then do you go back to Mozart or do you play some like tribal music? Or do you, well, what would you, what do you know, what would you serve that alien up to listen to that represents human music? And is that even
Well,
possible?
that's the thing. Is it possible? Because if we look at, the first mention of musical notation, that was in ancient Sumeria on the clay tablets that they had, or was it the stone tablets that they had in the caves? The first record of musical notation, apothecary, maths, literature, all this sort of stuff 12,000 years ago. So we have no way of knowing what they were actually making music-wise then. But
Mm.
that would probably be the truest form of expression in music. The music that was created in these tribal situations, whether it's even earlier than that, where people are like beating their chests around the fire or whatever, you know what I mean? But to answer your question, I'd say we go with a different pronged approach. We'd have to take them on a journey of music, right? So, are they allowed to take any substances that will alter the mind?
Ooh. I'm gonna say no. They've got let's say
Right, okay,
I'm gonna
okay.
say five songs. You're allowed to give them five songs, and you can decide the order, but they've got to be sober.
Right, Breathe by Pink Floyd. That's
Hmm.
number one.
I feel like I know that one. Yeah, 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 yeah. Right, okay.
Um, The Beatles' Hey Jude,
Right, yeah,
Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen.
yeah.
You'd have to play like a Wolfgang or a Mozart. And then finally, I'd say Lost in the World by Cigarettes and Scratch Cards out on the 25th of June.
Oh, that's marketing.
But what's your justification for those? Just before we move on to others, like why have we picked Queen? Why have we picked like Pink Floyd? What's the Beatles? Why? What's the reasoning? Why not like tribal music from like Aborigine people played on didgeridoos or whatever? Do you know what I mean? Or why not
Well, we've
just
never recorded that, have we?
yeah, but you can find it online, is what I'm saying. Like, there's got to be, I don't know, I think about tribal chanting has to be a part of human music. That must have been the first sort of this appreciation of sound. There's theories out there that singing came before language and things like this. And is that music or is that just communication? Where are the lines here?
Well, it's like, when you go to the communication side of thing, you look at what Chomsky said about the language acquisition device that you have in your brain,
Yeah.
meaning would a language acquisition device be innate? With that being said, would that also mean that a musical device within your brain already exists as well? You know, is there some sort of predisposition as to how we consume music? You
Mm,
know,
mm.
maybe you'd throw some Mongolian throat singing in there.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we throw some of that in there. But the reason that I picked those songs is I feel like they're perfect reflections of the human experience. You know, a
Mm.
lot of these bands, they're from working class backgrounds. They've lived as a human, you know, as one of the many cogs in this machine in which we live. So you look at the Beatles, they're working class lads from the Northwest. Pink Floyd, working class. Queen, you look at some of the lyrics that Freddie Mercury wrote that are so introspective, and they teach about what's going on in the head of a guy that he was gay in a time when it was illegal to be gay. You know, he had HIV for a long time and he was dying while he was writing his music and he knew he was going to die. And I feel like that is a reflection of the human experience, which is why I've picked those songs.
Hmm. What are you saying, Lewis, before me and Jacob put our thoughts, if Jacob or I have any? Are you playing the Alien, the Farsi catalog? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I play one of those tunes on in that weird mood. And they'll be like, boys were off. Can't be around here. This stuff is too much. I'll probably go Tony Anderson, Emmanuel, for
Oh, that's good.
sure.
That's good.
Uh, got a few, but I can't remember their names. One by Felix Raphael. It's got like a sort of, like words in it that kind of question their existence. Yeah, it's like kind of questions it, like, I can't think of the words for that. What else? Honestly, I really don't know.
Mm.
I
Have you got
honestly
any
don't
thoughts?
know. Tony Anderson and Manuel, yeah, for sure.
I don't know that song. What? Yeah, maybe I need to
It's a
look at
really
it.
good piano piece. It's a really good piano piece.
Maybe I
Um,
have heard it then. Is it classical? Or is it
On the
Modern.
brink, it's on the brink
I,
of that.
I tried to get him on the podcast and he said no.
really?
Yeah.
Quite funny.
Um, yeah, it's a modern kind of classical piece. I'll say my thoughts. You could go that direction of, as you're saying, the tribal direction. Like, I think we had, I think like the could be a good direction.
Yeah.
It's like what the most
Song on.
significant. Isn't that what the most significant noise or something, or it's like the most powerful noise? Someone said that on a podcast to us.
Yeah.
Um, my general thoughts are, and going back a little bit as well, when we talk about kind of music that's like constructed for the consumer, and you compare that to like pure art, I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference between like the craftsman and the artist, whereas the craftsman kind of engineers something really catchy, whereas the artist might put something out very experimental and for them, for their own. It's like empiricism of like you do this last time because it worked before, or do you do something new that really speaks a feeling? And then you might say, well, do we give the alien something catchy, or do we give something new, something emotional and significant? And we don't want to give a something. So I don't think you want to give them something catchy because I don't think catchy means good. It's like Lil Pump Gucci Gang. That's catchy, but that's not good.
Mm.
Well,
It's like
I
it's
don't.
similar to like eating food that tastes nice, but it's not good for you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like Gucci Gang is like the McDonald's burger of food of music. Do you know what
I don't even know who that is.
Um, so I actually think like the best combination though is when something is maybe I think what we get the alien is something that's both catchy and both good. So I think maybe something like some Bob Marley,
I mean?
whatever.
Yeah.
Is it called Three Little Birds? Is that the title? Is the
Yeah,
title?
that's
Yeah,
what
that's
everyone
the
knows.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd contribute Bob Marley to this five.
Mm.
So um, I think we need. I think we need to serve the alien something that's catchy, but also artistically good and maybe significant. And I think that's what Sigs and Farsi have done so well with this list so
Yeah.
far is I think these songs are significant. They really make a big impact to you when you listen to them as a person. So yeah, that'll be my contributions.
Yeah, yeah. I think I sort of combine a bit of what all three of you said. I think Bohemian Rhapsody is a good shout. I feel like it's got a lot of complexity to it. It's got a lot of different elements. It's got a lot of emotion involved in it. It was such a massive tune when it came out as well. It was such a risky tune, and yet that risk paid off because it was something so new. Um, and it's sort of so emblematic of a certain era of music at that time. But equally, I would definitely put something classical in there. I would definitely. Have you guys heard? It's a song called "Arrival of the Birds," and it's been used in different movie soundtracks. Like I know it was in The Theory of Everything, a film about Stephen Hawking. But it starts with like this sort of quite mellow, fast but soft, I guess, quieter like
Do an
piano.
impression?
Say again.
Can you do like an impression of it? Like
No, I definitely can't. But
Oh,
what I
okay.
can do, I'll put I could get the song up on my Spotify and then put the link to the Spotify in the chat in the Zoom call if you guys can listen to it as we're going. I don't know, maybe uh this is not going to work, but let's see. Share copy link to song. Here we go. Look at this. Chat. Can you guys see the chat function? There you go. This is the classic song I mean. But then it slowly just rises into this like string crescendo. And it's like that to me, Sig said it's this that his choices were like uh perfect descriptions of the human experience. But I would say classical song like this that has kind of like your bio as a musician, Lewis, of the mix or the balance between melancholy and hope. This rise of these strings, it's kind of like this ecstatic, positive feeling, this hopeful feeling, but also a deep sadness in it that reflects, I don't know what it reflects. I mean, maybe the transience of the experience of that music, that it will end, that eventually the crescendo has to come back and the song will end, and that kind of reflects something about our mortality as humans. I don't know, I'm getting weird and philosophical, but I would definitely put a song like that to the Alien. But also, Jake, I think your point on Bob Marley is a good one. A different kind of genre, something that represents a period of human culture and history, and a man that did so much for his culture. So maybe I'd put like, do you guys know High Tide or Low Tide by Bob Marley? I know I've sent that to you before, Jacob. That's like a real emotional song for me. So something like that. I feel like you'd have to give him a range. But yeah, the idea of can we, I guess it's interesting and it's a significant idea, isn't it, that we can convey what it means to be human through music, and actually that in many ways that would be more effective than sitting an alien down and trying to describe to him what we've done as a species. Like, if you put it in this context, right? An alien comes down to Earth and goes, right, you've got 10 Earth minutes to try and explain to me what your species is about and what you've done. You couldn't talk about it in 10 minutes. There's been so much, but maybe a collection of three songs from three different time periods would do our species and what it means to be human and what it means to be on Earth way more justice than any ramble with words would. So, yeah, I'll leave it there and see what you guys think.
Yeah, I think you're correct. I think, there's a new Kanye West song that we can maybe play.
Oh my God.
No,
Kanye West.
right. I think it's about the human experience, and I think music does almost transcend communication, because most people on this planet do consume music, whether they want to or not. It's just something that we've always had, and I think that'd be a good way of genuinely just showing life on Earth, maybe some classical music, and then you go into maybe some punky stuff, and then you've got the electronic music as well. Who knows?
Hmm.
Um, you know how they say like a picture is worth 1,000 words, and then is it like a video is worth 1,000 pictures or something like that? I I think it's going to be the same with music, and that it is going to be worth 1,000 words. And it's interesting. I think you said we were singing before we were talking. Did you?
There's a theory that I've heard people like pose that as a theory. It hasn't been confirmed as true, but it's just an interesting thought to have.
Well, where's like the logic behind it?
Well, we definitely made noise before we made words. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Before our complex language systems developed. I'm talking primitive, like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years ago. Yeah, we could make sounds before we made words, and maybe to communicate emotions and things, we did sing. I don't know. Well, obviously, you can never. It's putting an evolutionary psychology hat on where you can never really prove that anything's true or not. But I feel like just based on intuition, that feels kind of right.
To be fair, like if you think about it, like you, I can imagine like with grunting, like if someone's communicating something to you, like if you just want to say like yes, you just go but then if someone gets you off, you'd go and so I think that's where the like the music from comes from. Like it'd be just like making noises to each other, and then eventually you'd like someone along the line would like because it's the emphasis of how you use those those noises. And then someone along the line just thought it'd be a bit easier to make to turn it into like words.
Well, instruments, the creation of musical instruments is so old. Like you go to museums and things and look at eras of history from thousands of years ago, and people have handmade little flutes, or they've got certain, drums, or they've got. It's just it's such a universal part of our culture, isn't it? So I think it's something. There's definitely something deep to it, definitely. But yeah, it's interesting.
And the drums come first. That was a form of communication, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
So
I
it was the,
could have been like a part of tribal war or something. You know what I mean? You go into war, you're about to sort of attack an enemy tribe, and you play sort of, I don't know, real crashy or eerie drum beats, and yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I think it was used as a fear tactic as well as communication, like you say in war. Because as soon as you still have it now with the bagpipes and stuff like that, snare, lines, anything like that.
Mm.
It has a certain presence to it. Like when I went to the Edinburgh military tattoo, this was years ago. Yeah, you hear the bagpipe drone, and they're piping up, and it's just got one steady tone, and you hear that snare coming. You just can't help but feel like, whoa,
Yeah,
it's powerful.
yeah. It really strikes something deep, doesn't it?
Yeah.
so the drums were the first instrument. Like that would make sense to be fair. Like because it would just be like two sticks and then a log.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I don't know if that would be like blowing into like a tree. Um, may I'm actually yeah. To be fair, I think the drums are an easier like a thing to make rather than like something to blow into.
But look at that temple they've got in Mexico. Is it Chichen Itza? Is that right? Have I butchered the pronunciation? But basically, this is like an 8,000, 9,000 year old temple where if you clap at the bottom of it, the acoustics of it, it travels up the temple and it makes a mimic of a bird.
Oh, I know what you mean.
It's called Chichen Itza, I think. That's thousands and thousands of years old, and they had the technology and the resources available at that time to create that. So who's to say that there wasn't something else?
Yeah, yeah,
But the
yeah.
question is about that temple is was that purposeful? Or did someone just stand there one day and just find life? You know what I mean? That sound came. And they were like,
Yeah.
oh shit.
Shit, I can blag this. This is my $1 million idea right
Well,
here.
exactly, you just don't know.
They sacrifice a child to celebrate. Yes, we're in the money, guys. We're in the
Yeah,
money.
they probably would. They probably are. But that's when you start questioning just the morals of just any human being on this planet. And just like, is it all for money in the end? Or whatever they were using, just in metal shillings or something.
Yeah. Anything to just fuel the ego. You know what I mean? Was it all prick ego? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely
They're
something.
like flipping out, boys. This is millions and millions of tourists. You know that.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to come over here to clap.
Yeah, that's it. You could sell a great narrative here. Yeah.
So I'm not that familiar with this destination. So like now people just sort of it's generally like touristy and people just go there and they clap.
Yeah, and it makes the sound of a local bird, like very similar to the mating call of a local bird that lives in this rainforest. And it's like, how?
Hmm.
Like a whistle sort of sound. It's like a
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I think it's
And
called, if you type in Chichen, and it's a, let me try and find it. Yeah, Chichen Itza.
Oh yeah.
You see that bit on the top there?
Yeah.
Basically, the way that the stairs are built, the audio, well, the sound wave will travel up there and it'll go into this chamber at the top, and then the frequencies will sort of reverberate around there, and then it'll come out with a oh noise.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's
Interesting.
interesting.
Then you get into a weird sort of thought about like, the intelligence of ancient civilizations and how are they really like history has just been told to us, isn't it? Or were there times where they had technology or intuition or knowledge from somewhere that we don't have now? And where did that come from? And how did they, the pyramids is the prime example of that, but that's another small example. Was this building constructed for them to make, this noise and it was structured in a way that that echo did that, or is it just coincidence? Or, it's just makes you think, doesn't it?
I think
Please.
the structures that you find across the world that are very similar to each other, that have been constructed at a very similar time of history,
Yeah.
with no shared communication systems, it leads you to one of two outcomes, really, that we're sort of on this path of technological advancement that's almost inevitable based on the surroundings and we came to it at the same time, or we had external source. Not going to say that's aliens,
Mm.
not going to say that that's an ancient civilization like certain people allude to, but it's interesting.
Mm.
I
But
think I think history is only written by the victors, and I don't think we've got it much right.
Be
you
hard,
look at,
you know.
sorry, Joe.
No, you go, man. I didn't really have anything. You go.
So you look at like the Great Library of Alexandria, for instance. When did that set on fire? That was probably the main source of our information collectively, and it all burnt down, or so they say. I personally believe that all that information is still being held in the Vatican. But you look at all sorts of stuff. Are any of you familiar with the Voynich manuscript?
No.
Right, so there's this manuscript that's been found and carbon dated. It was found in a bookshop in Poland. And basically, it's written in, they've had linguists on it. It's written in a language that no one's ever been able to decipher, ever. And it has detailed, about herbs and botany and things like that, and flowers, the anatomy of humans and different animals with detailed sketches and things like that, all within this book that no one can translate. There's things like that that exist that we don't know about. I'll pull up a link, guys. I'm
Yeah,
not
look,
quite sure what point I was trying to make, but it's that there's this information out here that we have no idea how to even sort of deal with it.
I think the point is, there's just so many questions about this planet. It's unreal.
Mm.
yeah,
There's too many. But with the internet now, you can get submerged in so much, right? And it's all just opinion based, really, unless it's fact checked or have some studies or whatever done on it. It's just hard to know, but I think that's what makes it fascinating that we're even sat here talking.
Yeah. Yeah, humans, we have this capacity to question. We don't have this capacity to gain the answers, but yet we're blessed or cursed with this ability to, we're aware. We know something's going on. We don't quite know what it is. And I think that's the ultimate existential struggle of a human being that animals don't have and other parts of the natural world don't have. But we're aware that we're a part of something. We're aware that we get told narratives about how things are, that they could be wrong. We're aware that humans can lie. We're aware that people can be possessed by their own ego and do people wrong. We're aware that people have different motives, and can tell you one thing in order to get something they want. And it's all so complicated. So it's hard, I think, when you're, guys like us that will come on and have conversations like this, it's hard to not get too invested in questioning shit like that, isn't it?
I mean, if there's a book that no one can understand the language, like, what do you do about that? Like, it's and also when I didn't know about that library when all those books were burned, but if that information is gone, then that's just not like the we don't know what we don't know, and maybe what we could know, um, is like it's not available.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, what do
Okay.
you do about that? You don't know. Yeah, it's quite terrifying. I want to just pivot back to a point from something we talked about earlier that's relevant to an experience
No.
that we had. Oh, is Jacob getting kicked out of his room?
Oh no, so some woman was like looking for a bag. We should left it here earlier.
Okay, good. You're safe.
Um, what's our thoughts on aliens though?
Oh, we're talking about. Okay, let's go then. Yeah, go on, boys, jump in.
Um, I've pivoted on this a lot over my years. Much contemplation about it. I used to be like, oh my God, the pyramids, they must have been built by aliens, whatever. Um, I'm going to flip the question on its head. Who says that we aren't aliens? Who's to say that a meteor didn't crash into Earth carrying alien bacteria billions of years ago, and our entire evolutionary cycle is based on alien DNA?
What are you basing that on?
Just speculation.
Okay.
But have you seen an octopus?
I have, well, not, have I seen octopus in person? I don't know. No, but yeah.
They're mad. Joel, they're mad.
They
I'm
are,
not
man.
having that that's natural, you know. Um, Maybe aliens have been here. You look at things like Bob Lazar, if you're familiar with Bob Lazar.
Yeah.
He's obviously not lying, but are these things that we see major technological advancements from our own governments who are trying to sort of sprinkle this breadcrumb trail of fear to keep everyone subservient and, obliging to the rules of society? Or have we actually come into contact with aliens yet? Um, I think if we had, they'd be watching us from afar and just sort of letting us do our own thing.
Mm, wait, octopuses are mad, right? Because they have like 8 brains and
Heart, eight hearts, isn't it? Or is it eight brains? I don't know.
I think it's two brains, 8 legs, 4 hearts, or something mad. You might want to get a fact check.
well, that is I feel like that's a good example of the closest thing we have to an alien actually. In that like kind of when we think of it.
Is that
But
only, Jake, is that only an aesthetic thing that because it's slimy and it's got tentacles and like, The Simpsons drew an alien like that where it was sort of green and slimy and had tentacles and a big eye, or it's just based on like imagery from films and TV? Like, why do you think an octopus looks like an alien and like a dog doesn't? Do you know what I mean? No, but I'm being serious. Where's that come
You're
from?
right. You're right. You're
I
right.
think alien is more the term, like, kind of out of our realm of thought, like an octopus, like, to mimic things. But yeah, that does link back to, I think, how media is depicted, morphing stuff and, flipping green men walking about. But yeah.
Whoa.
But can an octopus play music?
No.
Do they like, exactly. So then
Has
it
anyone
links
ever
back to
observed an
us.
octopus to make music, though? How do we know?
An
It's
octopus has
true.
has nine brains and three hearts.
What the? How? Why?
It has mini brains that means each arm can perform tasks independently.
Right, so it could play an instrument better than us then if it
I
knew.
reckon it could be Unreal on the cello.
if we asked it to if we asked
Communicating
an
with
octopus what 5 songs would you play us to
Probably some sort of like fucking
or
aquatic music.
Gangnam Style.
Or just
it'd be
like
like
ocean like ambience.
Wouldn't that be really disappointing if it picked Gangnam Style? After all that thought you put into how magical these creatures are, Gangnam Style. But maybe they've got a sense of humor with one of their brains.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Only one though.
It's just one of them.
Yeah.
You want to catch an octopus on the right side of its body when you're talking to it because it's either going to laugh at all your jokes and say, "Oh, that Ciggs is a
I
good lad,
think
isn't he?" Or he's just going to strangle you with his other 4 arms.
yeah about 4.
Jake is getting told off. What's happening now?
He stole the bag.
Yeah, she should back it looking for the bag. She don't trust me.
We've got theft
He
on
doesn't trust
camera here.
you. Why would you steal a bag?
I don't know. So we talked. So it's said about an octopus that might play like under the sea. It might.
That's-
But what about
Oh.
but, if an alien was to play some music to us, 5 songs,
Hmm.
um, would we be able to understand it? I mean, I think it's just going to make noises to us, and I think it's going to be. I think is there like a universal laws to music? So like there would be some kind of frequency, there'd be some kind of thing going on where it might be catchy and we can understand that and it still has beats per minute. That's a universal thing. Like it would still be some kind of art form of some kind of music, maybe.
The thing is, though, you don't know you'd be able to hear it because the spectrum of like sound frequency that the human ear can understand and interpret is finite. That's why you
Yeah,
have like
it's
ultrasound and
very
infrasound. Yeah, that's why you have dog whistles that you can't hear, but your dog can hear. Like an alien can play you their best tune, but how you don't even know you'll be able to interpret it because you might not have the literal biological hardware to even hear it and understand it.
I feel like technology could change that though.
I don't know. Can
give them
technology?
all Neuralink chips. Put
Yeah.
Neuralinks in the alien, put one in us. We'll communicate telepathically.
Figure it out.
But like even to touch on the BPM point that you mentioned, Jacob, like this goes a bit more theoretical now and not really about music, but they say that our perception of time is based upon our experience. It's about how the sun is, it's about what speed we move at. So, for instance, even a fly would experience, Brian Cox said this better than I did, but a fly will experience time a lot quicker than what a human will because it travels quicker and it's a smaller size. So even the way that an alien would determine what BPM is and how many beats per minute or beats per second, that'd be based on the time in the origin, basically. So what if we couldn't actually comprehend it?
Mm.
Everything's gonna be tainted by human bias for sure. You're like, oh,
Even the concept of an alien, for instance, like they've recently, well, they've speculated, it's almost confirmed that Titan, one of the moons of, is it Saturn or Jupiter? They've got water, it's a frozen planet, it's an ice planet, and they think that there's going to be alien bacteria on that planet or microbial life form. By definition, that is alien life. But what we're talking about as alien life is consciousness, sentience, but maybe maybe we're the only people out here.
hmm,
Maybe they're just like us. It's just another evolution of us.
yeah.
Because if it's water, obviously there's going to be like different things going on inside the bacteria there. But it just sounds like these other planets that have been confirmed with water on. Just sounds like it could be another evolution of just how it works here.
Hmm.
Oh,
Well, I think my general point, Jacob, going back to what I think of it is of aliens generally is it's kind of a consequence of our fascination with things we don't understand. We love this idea that there are beings out there watching us or that could travel down on a spaceship and have higher knowledge to us and all that kind of shit. And yeah, it's interesting to ponder about, but I think there are so many more things we don't currently understand about ourselves that will be so much more useful to navigate. In many ways, we are aliens to our own selves. You know what I mean? We are unknown in terms of why we behave the way we do, why we think the ways we do, why our culture is constructed the way it is. Maybe I think we better spend our time and energy thinking about how to really get control over ourselves, each individual having agency over their life, and then that coming into the collective and changing the way the species is before we start thinking about things outside. I feel like maybe it's that fascination with that is just a distraction from what's going on in our present now, if that makes sense. Like there's already, it's not like we figured it out here and we just find it interesting to see what's happening on other planets. We don't know what's going on currently here. So how do we know do we want to know the answer to that question? Because let's say we do get told we've been visited or whatever, that's just going to create more hysteria. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you look at, the systems that are in place on this planet to control humans, to keep us in these little pockets. A lot of it is based on the idea of religion, right? So as soon as you come across thousands of years of society that's based upon the morals, ethics, principles, teachings of whether it be the Abrahamic religions, whether it be like the Eastern religions like Hinduism, you immediately, when you confirm aliens exist, you immediately discredit all of those religions
yeah, that's
because there's
why they
not a
won't
single
let you
mention
go.
of it in any of the religions. And then the power systems that you have in place on this planet, i.e., the Roman Catholic Church, I'm not being anti-Semitic here, right? But everyone always says Zionism, Zionism, Zionism. This is the main evil to this planet. But the evangelical American Christians cause more evil on this planet than what any other group of people does. And you're saying if aliens existed, they'd tell us something that goes against everything that they've ever said. No, what the heck? It's a way to keep us controlled.
And it's money.
And money.
There's a lot of money in religion.
Don't forget the money.
There's a lot of money in religion. Jesus Christ. So yeah, I think you're right. I don't think they'd let it slip. They wouldn't allow it just because of how much culture and what would happen to war? It would just stir everything. Actually, the whole social mold that we live in would just kind of crumble.
If we did find out about aliens, though, wouldn't it make us like kind of closer as human beings? Because it'd be like we're we're both humans, we're on the same team, and these aliens, we need to make sure that they're not a threat or that they're we need to kind of be closer as a planet. And if we realize the universe was suddenly infinite, which I actually think it is. I don't know why the creator would kind of just make one planet and kind of stop there. Um, and so I think I'd agree that maybe the people in power wouldn't want us to think about aliens, because I think maybe we'd come together a little bit as a planet. But um, do we want to know if there are aliens? Like, do we want answers to those questions? I don't know if our brain can really is built to comprehend those questions.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
interesting, but you look at some of the things that we've invented in recent years, like quantum computing and things like that. Theoretically, like that does not make any sense whatsoever. And I think this conventional idea we've had of alien life, that's extraterrestrial being from away from Earth. But I think in this last couple of years, people are more focusing on like the multi-dimensional beings sort of route. I'd say that's more likely than extraterrestrial life. But obviously, I'm not an expert on this. I'm just a boy from the northwest of England. You know what I mean? But that's my two pence.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it's not other planets. Maybe it's other dimensions. Maybe there's something to that from like what are the thing that popped into my mind when you said multidimensional beings. I thought of when people have like ayahuasca experiences. Is that just chemistry in the brain, or is it some kind of spirit or some kind of energy that we can't perceive through our human senses in sober life? It's just not, they just can't contact us, just in the way we can't hear ultrasound, and cannot see light beyond the visible light part of the electromagnetic spectrum, right? And is there, they're not like us in the way that they have heartbeats and blood and brains and hormones, but are there being, is there life? And it depends how we def the term life, but are there things that can communicate with us that aren't in our world now? Well, I guess based on my beliefs and the things that I pose in podcasts and the way I think about the world, maybe there is. And maybe that's what gave human beings, maybe back in the times where we question whether aliens were involved, like ancient Egypt, or these great structures made throughout history, or where religion comes from, or where philosophy comes from, is it is it that, is it some sort of spiritual pathway? It's something to do with the psychedelic experience. Because I'm reading a book at the moment called The Immortality Key, and it's a theory that a lot of the grounding philosophies and grounding like principles of Western culture, like Christianity and the ancient Greeks, sprang from like psychedelic rituals in a place called Eleusis in Greece, and then actually theories that the Christian Eucharist, sorry, in communion, like the bread and wine was a psychedelic sacrament. I don't know. I'm waffling now, but what do you
It
think
goes
about?
um it goes further even in there's a theory, isn't there, called stoned ape theory,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
basically argues that the reason that we have consciousness is because apes were eating like magic mushrooms over hundreds of thousands of years, and that's what went, boop, you know.
There's a weird line I feel like with me where I go from like I don't want to be a guy who's taken some drugs once and has some wacky ideas and is like a bit of a weird guy, because I do want to have my like psychology background. I do want it to be grounded in some science and some history, and I don't want to move too far into like the woo woo spiritual world that the rest of the population just shuts down. However, I can't disregard it, not only from personal experience but things that I've read. and things that intuitively feel right to me. So I'm trying to find the line of where is right. And I do agree with you, there's something to it. It's not as simple as just drugs. It's not as simple as just woo-woo spirituality that everyone should shut down. It just needs to be investigated more, I think.
I
Can I add a
think,
point of
sorry, Jacob, carry on.
when like someone gets schizophrenia or someone has maybe a head injury, surely their reality changes, but we wouldn't say they've entered a different dimension. We'd say that's something to do with their brain.
Mm.
And I'd immediately ask your the contrast of the conflicting of, is it dimension or is it your brain? I think I would compare it maybe to the different brain states. But then it's that the dimension thing does have a lot of weight to it too, and how far you want to take spirituality. Yeah.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, schizophrenia is one of those where I think about it in terms of we're born, right? And we are instantly hit with questions like who are we? What's going on in the world? What matters? What should we really be doing with our time? How do you treat other people? How do you stay moral? And all of that, just complexity and information, it just overwhelms us, right? So as a consequence of that, we have to create an illusionary self. And I create, and the world and myself, we create this idea of Joel Clifton, right? And that's who I am. That's who I exist as in the world. And that keeps those deep questions of who am I, what am I here, what matters here, that keeps those questions at bay. Because I adopt this narrative that I'm a 20-year-old male and I was born in Devon, and these are the things I'm good at, and these are my skills, and this is what I want to do in my life, and this is my mum, and this is my dad, and I've just sort of believed this story about what's going on in my life. With things like schizophrenia, the reason people go into psychosis and the reason their reality can alter so much, I think, is because from whatever reason in their brain, some sort of neurochemical change, or it's some abuse they went through, or whatever, a combination of the two, they no longer like the narrative that they had of their world and the self that they constructed just smashes to pieces. And then they're just opened up to the real complexity and the real absurdity of life that's really going on underneath it. But most of us in our sober, mundane lives just go along following this narrative because it's easier, because it prevents us from going mental. So that I kind of feel you, Jake, and that these people are they're just seeing reality through a different mirror. They're just not the mirror that we all do, the one that's accepted by our world. And maybe, yeah, you take these substances, your reality changes so much that do you then creep into what we'd call a different dimension, or is it just a different side to the world that we just currently can't perceive?
There's a lot to be said on it, really. If you take input on basically we'll use the UK as an example, we'll use our traditional culture of thousands of years. It's the Druids, it's the Celts, it's paganism, it's rituals, it's living off the land. It's these sort of things that were a big part of our self, our identity. And this is also mirrored in South America as well. When you look at the Inca people, the Aztec people, they have these ayahuasca ceremonies, like you were talking about earlier. And it's considered that your passage into manhood is actually this trip, this journey that you're about to go on through ayahuasca. It's interesting. Is it an illusion? Is it a different realm? Those are the questions that we don't have the answers to. But I know that there's some scientists that are doing a study at the moment where basically they're trying to map out the DMT realm in they're getting, like a clinical trial. They're doing a clinical trial and they're giving people a controlled dosage of DMT and they're sending them to go and map out what they see during this time period. And people are seeing the same entities, people are seeing the same things. Is that because they're in a different realm entirely? Is that to do with telepathy? That's another argument that, people argue that in the past humans may have been telepathic. Not sure whether I believe it or not, but if you're taking the same substance and we are telepathic, maybe that's why. But the reason I touched upon quantum computing earlier is the way that that works. I'm sorry if I'm butchering this and I'm sorry if I'm wrong here, guys. But basically, the way that that works is literally they draw power from other dimensions to this computer. I'll find something to corroborate my claims later. I'll find a source for you. But it's been argued that that is actually what quantum computing is, which, in effect, if quantum computing exists, that also means that multiverse theory exists.
Lewis, any thoughts?
Psychosis. We could talk about that for hours. Oh, I've been through that one too many times now. Mine's alcohol triggered. There can be times that I drink alcohol, I'm fine. If I get to like binge mode, I could drop into psychosis. Let me tell you that it feels like you're in a different realm. Trust me. It's like this is going to make me sound absolutely mental, but I've sat here for hours talking to voices. They're like voices. They sound human, but they kind of work with your emotions as well. So if I get fearful or angry, then that they will imitate that, and they'll start getting angry. But it's more directed towards like it's kind of at you, but through you at the same time. You've got to kind of know at that point, okay, you're in psychosis, and you can't feed it, else you'll go on a spiral, and then you start believing in, you start seeing shadows and like figures of the devil and just stuff that you've been fed as evil, like like the classic depiction of, like shadow figures around you. But that's common in people that get that. And it's just like sometimes I sat in the park and like I can't get my brain together. And I've thought I was telepathic as well. That's when I know it's the voices imitating the thought because I believed it. So it's like you're feeding it, but it's feeding through you. It's so hard to grasp.
Wait, what do you mean by like feeding it and like you can't feed it? Like give it power, do you mean?
You can give it power. So if I was to sit here talking and saying, what's our purpose here? I get really existential with the voices. I'm like, what's our purpose? And they're like, it's kind of through you. They're like, you're kind of living your purpose. They kind of always make out that either music or just simply living is the purpose, rather than anything sinister. It has got sinister before. Well, obviously, I was not in the right state, and that pushes the psychosis into, it goes with your state. So then that becomes dark, and you start doing weird stuff, and walking around town backwards like a lunatic, and just getting yourself into a right old man.
It is amazing how vulnerable our sense of reality is. And you can behave in certain ways and go down some rabbit holes or take certain substance or whatever, and the world to you changes. I mean, that's what fascinates me so much as a psychology student, and not even just in the sort of traditional education sense, but just as a guy that's interested in the mind and philosophy and spirituality and how that all combines into our experience of the world. Like the world you live in is so tapered by factors of your own philosophies and of 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 the way you interact with it. That to me, that's the biggest mover in the way that like, the physical world that we seem to all live in, and that science will tell us we all live in the same place. That to me is a time that's like the canvas. That's not the painting. What you put over that world, the way you interact with that world is you. It's based on your own individual, like I don't know, genetic uniqueness in your, and that leads to your behavior and in your feelings and your emotions and your thoughts, and then what you decide to do about those things, and the way you connect with other people and the way you connect with nature and you connect with technology and you connect with your work or how creative you are, and it's just it all becomes so unique, but it can also change so quickly after from one second to another. And it's like, yeah, reality is so vulnerable. And that's why when we see things like mental health and mental illness and psychosis and people that have weird out there beliefs, and it's all just because we're all painting a different picture over the same canvas, I think. And yes, the canvas is universal, but what we experience is so different. And I think my philosophy with it is that you can learn new ways of interacting with the world based on your experiences, based on what works and what doesn't. And it's not bloody easy, I'll tell you that, but it's possible, I guess. And music is one thing that does that. Just to literally return back to like the whole core of this conversation and why you two guys are here is, I think to me, music is not just as simple as sound. I think music transforms your reality, and it gives you a new reality to live in.
Yeah.
And I used it literally just recently at my international tournament. Like all the other boys were in the changing rooms and they wanted to listen to like I don't know Chelsea Dagger and Oasis and like get all like shouty and loud. But I was sat in the corner and I was listening to classical music. I was listening to tribal chanting, and things like that to get me in a different state of being to go and perform. And yeah, your reality is malleable, I guess. That's sort of the TLDR of that last ramble.
Can
I
I?
think
I've gone six.
I think with like you were just mentioning, Joel, about, forming your reality based on the aid from music. I think this is a really problematic theme within the modern world at the moment. So if we look particularly in the UK music scene, the famous or the successful popular genre at the moment is UK drill, right? The biggest artist out of the UK at the moment is probably Central C, right? You got people like this, they're making songs about murder, selling drugs, disrespecting women, right? And that's pumped into the mainstream. And then these lower socioeconomic backgrounds that these people originate from, the people in that background at that time, they look up to that person. They aspire to be that person because they've got out of the hood, they've got out of the ghetto, whatever, they've got off the estate. And it's a vicious cycle. And it feeds into this cycle of crime, manipulation, fear, overt sexualization that we find within the lower working class.
Hmm.
And I totally agree with what you're saying, Joe, is basically what I'm saying there, in that you can sculpt your version of reality based on not only the music, but the art that you consume, whether that be film, whether that be paintings, whether that be what podcasts you listen to, whether that be what book you're reading, whether that be what tunes you listen to. It's mad.
It's everything.
Yeah, I've had to change up the way that I consume music because I see it more in how what I consume affects my spirit. Like, we spoke a lot about this before, but yeah, aggressive like drill tunes. If I think if you want to be hyped up and you're in the gym, it works, and it might be that might be the time and place to listen to it when you need it there. But if I'm listening to it like every day on the walk to uni, I don't think it's good for my spirit. So I had to try and think more about what I consume and how that's affecting me.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm extremely weird in the music I listen to compared to most people my age. I mean, I listen to like basically love songs and croony like jazz tunes from pre-1960, and I listen to anything modern that I listen to is mainly just atmospherics, to be honest, and like euphoric house and things like that. And then I listen to a lot of classical music, and like you say, Jake, the only crashy like rap music I listen to is when I'm in the gym and I need to do a hard set. That's literally the only time. It sort of serves a function, but in daily life, I want to live in a reality where love is the underlying source. I mean, it sounds such like a hippie maniac here, but fuck it. Like where love is like the main source of everything, and there's beauty, and it's empowering, and there's enthusiasm behind it, and there's hope in it, and there's joy in it, and it's that subconscious messaging. If that's what I listen to first thing in the morning and last thing at night, and it gets across that message that things are okay and that I am a good person, I do good things in the world, and life is worth living, then it does just it will affect the way that you interact with your reality.
Yeah, we've used to kind of change our reality in like a very sort of mentally sort of panicked and way, but I think you can do it in a positive way as well in constructing a really beautiful reality. And it'd be interesting to see how deep that goes. I mean, we've all probably tested the depth of our reality and how substances have affect that, but um it'd be cool if you can do it in a way without taking a substance.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, wouldn't you argue that art is a substance?
Oof.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, it changes your state of consciousness. I mean, it doesn't do it directly, but sure, I like the sort of I like the point you're trying to make there. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, life itself is art, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the best way to think about life. Think about life in a poetic way. Think of your life as a dance. Think of it like a painting. Think of it in terms of think of a metaphor because it's not it's not this story that ourselves and our narratives from the world, are kind of lead us to think. It's a series of moments we have, and we have to dance along with life of the high moments, of the ecstasy, of the hope, of the joy, of the love, but also with the darkness and the loneliness and the anxiety and the social pressure and the depression. And we have to dance along with each note of life, just in the way that in music there's minor and major chords, and you need both all together. And life has big sort of building crescendos, but it also sometimes goes soft and is slow and is depressing and all of that comes together. But you just have to dance along with the music of it, and that's why, yeah, I agree with you. Life is an art form. Life is about art. Without art, life is dead. And yeah, the day we forget that is the day we die.
Well, that's interesting. The minor and the major could be like the negative and the positive.
Well, that's what you're taught on day one of fucking year seven music. Major chords are happy, minor chords are sad. You know what I mean? It's like that's what I was told anyway.
I
I,
like the melancholy. So not to talk too much about myself, sorry about this, but my entire new project, it's called Post-Apocalypse. And it's sort of a journal of myself through this era of my life, and about that we're in this period where we're at the tip, we're after the tipping point. The clock has hit 12, we're after the tipping point. But the point that I'm trying to make is all of that EP, I've done it in C major, production wise, but I've also encapsulated the melancholy as well. So even though it's in major keys, I've made it sound miserable, and I've made the lyrical content of what I'm saying actually be to the contrary of that.
mm,
Anyway, that's just the point I wanted to make.
no, I think
But yeah, that's the thing, Joel. It's, you've got your major keys, you've got your minor keys. But who said that we can't make a major key sad, and who said we can't make a minor key happy?
Yeah.
mm, Lewis, any thoughts?
I think that's just the general instinct of a basic triad, isn't it? If you just do a straight up C, it kind of does sound just happy. And then the minor just kind of gives you that thing. But if you're going back to like nursery rhymes, that's probably where that, you know what I mean? You listen to Blah Blah Black Sheep, kind of happy. But then you put that in minor, and it feels like that, that sheep that want to be it. I know what you mean. You can use intervals.
No, I love it. I love it. I love
You
it.
can use intervals in a major key to kind of make it, melancholy.
Make Bar Black Sheep to depressing song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I
You
prefer
could do
Twinkle
it.
Twinkle Little Star personally.
I'm just using the simplest form I can think of.
No,
Like,
it's good. The sheep don't want to be. Have you got any wool? No, fuck off. Don't have any wool.
try it. Do you play the piano thing?
No, I wish I could. I wish I could.
I do have a piano. Well, a MIDI keyboard. It's here. One sec.
Wow.
Um,
Well, I'll tell you, your next goal is to learn Bar Bar Black Sheep in minor.
oh, you mean somebody I used to know? By God, yeah.
Oh, is it? Actually, you're right. You're right. Oh, yeah, no, you are right. That is it, isn't it?
But
It's sort of similar, isn't it? It's that same
it's the exact same
pattern.
progression.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I
Wait,
prefer Bar Bar Black Sheep.
Uh,
wait, Lewis, plug some of your music. When are you next dropping?
Oh, well, mate, I'm in a creative rut at the minute. I've
Really?
got a couple of stuff. I'm just trying to, because I was in a creative rut, I started going back to old songs and seeing how I could rework them into like more beat driven stuff. But yet with that kind of, just like the kind of core of the tune, but just with like a different essence to it. And like I've got a couple of piano things, but when it comes to piano, I don't want it to be, I don't want it to be as simple as I was making it. It's not that I want utter complexity. It's just I want to see the progression in the piano playing instead of like what I know I can do. It takes longer now for me to suss out if it works or not, basically.
well, I enjoyed your one of your newer songs, "Contemplate," is one of my new favorites from yours at the moment that came out in the last few months. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
Sig, have you got anything to promote as we're sort of closing off?
Yeah, so my new single, Lost in the World, is out on the 25th of July. I've got a headline show in London on the 4th of July, Camden, Fiddler's Elbow. Please come, guys. But yeah, my new music video is out on the 25th of July, filmed in Tokyo. It's called Lost in the World. Very apt. It's very melancholic, synthy, sort of 80s pop style instrumental with me rambling about the world over the top of it.
Beautiful.
Mm. Any final
I don't
thoughts?
have anything to promote at the minute. Just keep an eye out. That's all I can say.
Oh, there you are.
God knows when our next release.
May
But
I ask a question, Lewis, about
go
music and
for it.
your workflow and stuff like that? One issue that I found with a lot of musicians is that they find themselves in this perfectionist sort of category. Would you define yourself as that?
Yeah, yeah.
One thing that I read lately about perfectionism that sort of shifted my mindset is you're not looking for what's perfect. You're actually just finding faults too easily. Try and shift the mindset on it, and it helps.
Kind of like that. No, I'm all right with imperfections, honestly. If
Mm.
it's either mixed, there's been many a time recently when my hard drive is just completely gone, and that's happened 3 times. But luckily, because I brought it into iTunes, I could get the track up. But then I have to master it in kind of mixing fashion.
Oh,
But
really?
yeah, I did that with Contemplate because I only had the WAV, and I
Yeah.
was like, it's got to the point where there's no more I can do without really messing it up, basically.
Yeah, it's just multi-band compression and EQ, really, isn't it? But if you put too much of it on, you're going to ruin the entire makeup of the track, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't really use multi-band compression a lot, only if it's on bass to duck the lows, but
Yeah.
just usually EQ mid-side, especially if you've only got the WAV,
Mm.
and that's all you can do. But
I'll have
yeah,
to check it out, man. See how it sounds.
yeah, you're on Spotify as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's just
Yeah,
cigarettes and scratch cards.
check it out.
But yeah, I'll take your contact after this anyway.
Sounds a good day.
Oh,
This is good. I think we're stop the recording here. Thanks for everyone for listening.
Thanks,
All right.
guys.